Today, we are diving deep into one of the most critical and complex rivalries on the planet, India versus China. It's a fascinating story, full of tension, weird paradoxes, and a really high-stakes geopolitical game between two ancient civilizations trying to find their place in the modern world.
So how are we going to break all this down? Well, first we'll ask, what exactly is this Fox strategy China's supposedly using? Then, how do they actually use it in the real world? We'll also look at conflicts that go way beyond just land, and then dig into the strange economic ties that bind them. And of course, we'll cover India's response and what this all means for a potential new world order.
All right, first things first. To really get what's going on between these two giants, you have to understand the playbook, the core philosophy that's guiding China's actions. Think of it less like a boxing match and more like a really long game of chess.
Okay, so that brings us to the big question, right? What in the world is this Fox strategy we're talking about? What's the master plan here?
Basically, it's the ultimate long game. We're not talking about a quick knockout punch here. The idea is to slowly, methodically, and kind of sneakily gain the upper hand. You weaken your opponent bit by bit, often so subtly they don't even see it coming. This isn't about winning a fight next week. It's about setting the board so you've already won 20 years from now.
And this is where that fox versus tiger idea really clicks. The tiger? That's your classic in-your-face aggression. Think tanks rolling, loud threats. It's obvious. But the fox? Now that's different. It's all about being clever, patient, and sly. It's about getting what you want so quietly that your opponent might not even know they're in a fight until it's way too late.
Okay, so that's the theory. But how does this play out in the real world? Well, you can see it happening right now, turning from an abstract idea into actual moves on the ground.
Well, the clearest and honestly the scariest example is right there on that huge contested border between them. This is where all that abstract strategy gets super real, super fast.
It really breaks down into 3 simple steps. First, you nibble away at the territory just a little at a time. Then you build on that new ground to solidify your control. And all the while, you're using diplomatic talk to to run interference and make sure nobody's paying too much attention to what you're actually doing. And that first step has this brilliant name, salami slicing. You know, you don't take the whole sausage at once, right? You just take one thin slice, and then another, and another. It's not some big dramatic invasion. A perfect example is Aksai Chin. China just slowly moved in, built roads, ran patrols, and before anyone knew it, it was effectively theirs. No big war, just gone.
And step 2 is all about infrastructure. It's about building roads, airstrips, you name it, in these incredibly tough remote areas, like near Arunachal Pradesh. And why? Because it means if a crisis ever does kick off, China can get its troops there way faster than India can. So you see, it's not just about paving a road. It's about winning a war before the first shot is even fired.
But look, this fight isn't just about who controls which mountain pass. It goes way deeper than that. We're talking about a whole other battleground, one of culture and spirit.
Oh, for sure. The border is just the most obvious one. And this next point is a really fascinating look at how this whole rivalry spills over into things like soft power and even religion.
Okay, just think about this for a second. The Dalai Lama lives in India, right? India is pretty much the global center for Tibetan Buddhism. But China is adamant that they, and only they, get to pick the next Dalai Lama. You can just see the collision course, can't you? It's setting up this huge spiritual showdown down the road, where China might try to put its own guy in charge. That would cause an unbelievable rift.
All right, now this is where things get really weird and kind of contradictory, because you've got these two countries practically staring each other down in the Himalayas, but at the exact same time, their economies are completely tangled up with each other.
And here's the crazy duality right here. Politically, they're rivals, but economically, they kind of need each other, a lot. India depends on China for all sorts of materials, and for China, India's massive market is just too big to ignore. It creates this bizarre situation where they might actually work together against, say, Western tariffs, even while they're building up their militaries against each other. It's a total paradox.
So, you might be thinking, what's India's move here? How on earth do you deal with a country that's both your biggest rival and a major economic partner?
And you can't talk about India's response without talking about Pakistan. China and Pakistan are super close. They call it an all-weather friendship. For China, this is great. They pour money into Pakistan, get a port with access to the sea, and it keeps India on its toes. But for India, it's a strategic nightmare. It means they always have to worry about a potential war on 2 fronts at the same time.
So what's India doing? Well, its counter strategy is pretty smart. It's playing its own long game. First, they're trying to beef up their own manufacturing, so they're not so dependent on China. And second, they're making new friends and strengthening old alliances. We're talking deeper ties with the US, Japan, Australia, through things like the Quad. Basically, the plan is get strong on your own and make sure you've got powerful friends in your corner.
Okay, so this all leads to the biggest question of all. We've spent all this time talking about conflict, but what if? What if they chose a different path?
I mean, just imagine it for a second. With all the tension, all the mistrust, what if they actually decided to work together instead of against each other? It's a wild thought, but it's an important one.
Because the numbers here are just mind-boggling. I mean, look at this.
Together, we're talking about more than a third of every single person on Earth. The sheer power in that number, economically and demographically, it's just staggering.
And if they ever got on the same page, the entire global balance of power would shift, like overnight. You'd see groups like BRICS, with a united India and China at the helm, suddenly having more weight than the old G7. It would change everything. How global finance works, who sets the rules for trade, all of it.
But, and this is the huge but, that whole grand vision comes down to one simple thing. They just don't have trust. As long as that border is a hot zone, as long as soldiers are literally facing off against each other up in the mountains, the idea of them working together is, well, it's just not going to happen.
And that leaves us right back where we started, with the biggest question of all. Which path will they take? Is it going to be the cunning fox versus the defiant tiger, this endless rivalry? Or could it be some kind of historic partnership? The answer to that question won't just define what we call the Asian century, it's going to shape the entire world for all of us.